Good afternoon. Morning, rather. There is a chapter, a whole chapter in Maimonides that deals with the qualifications of the Messiah. The first thing that the Messiah has to be is he has to be a king. And what is a king? A king is someone who's afraid of no one. What happens when Jesus Christus is confronted and asked by the Romans, "Are you the Messiah?" He says, "I didn't say it, you did." In other words, if he is truly the Messiah, and as so many of you out there believe that he is one with the deity, why is he afraid to say? If one person is God, then he has no fear of anyone saying the truth. In fact, this happened before, and even in our lifetimes. In my lifetime, or at least a person who's contemporaneous with me. The previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Joseph Isaac Schneerson of blessed memory, was asked by his inquisitors, the men of the Efsektia of the NKVD, NKVD, the ones from whom the KGB learned from. Not very well, but they learned from them. And they wanted information, who his sources were, who his contacts were, what he's doing, and they never gave him nothing. So the man pulled out a revolver, and he said, "You see this toy? This toy has changed the mind of many a religious man." And the Rebbe looked at him and said, "Your toy can change the mind of someone who has two gods, who has many gods, and only one world. He only knows of this world. I have two worlds and one God, and your toy doesn't impress me." The man put the gun down because he saw he could not intimidate this man. The Rebbe said the truth, was not afraid of saying his position, despite the fact that they held all the guns, they could kill him. Jesus Christus, I'm not allowed to say the name as it is pronounced by the rest of you, was too fearful of saying that. On the cross, he complains to God, "Why have you forsaken me?" Of course, the Romans changed "Why have you forsaken me" to "Why have you slaughtered me?" And again, this shows complete lack of faith. There was a man contemporaneous with Jesus Christus, not that contemporaneous. He was born around that time. And in the year 135 of the Common Era, was having his skin and muscles and bones torn apart by iron combs. And he didn't ask God, "Why have you forsaken me? Why have you slaughtered me?" He said, "Shema Yisrael, Israel, listen. God is our life. He's our power, and he's one. There's nothing but him, and I will devote my life to him, even at the moment of death." Now, I ask you a question. Who's more powerful, Jesus Christus or Akiva ben Yosef, known as Rabbi Akiva? Akiva was not intimidated by pain and suffering, and he did not complain. He accepted what happened to him stoically. Obviously, he was in pain, but he was willing to take pain for the sake of God's glory. So, a Messiah has to be fearless, like Rabbi Joseph Isaac Schneerson, or like Rabbi Akiva, or like King David. Jesus might have been a great inspirational person, but he had fear of death, and he certainly was not brave. He certainly was not as fearless as King David, or as the Rebbe, or as our teacher, Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva wasn't even a Messiah. He was a teacher, that's it. Teacher of Talmud for the whole world. And he was unafraid. The other thing is that a person who is the Messiah has to be Hoge b'Torah v'osek b'mitzvos. So says Maimonides. He has to constantly be studying Torah. The only Torah that Jesus Christus studied was his own opinion. No other opinion counted. He did not believe in an oral law. He did not believe in a tradition. And he opposed the rabbis. The one place where Jesus gets it right is based upon the principle of V'chai Bohem, which is a well-known universal principle which is found in the Talmud, also found in Maimonides, that all mitzvahs are not supposed to lead to the death of a person, to the death of a person, not to the pain of the person. When he violated the Sabbath in order to feed people, it wasn't an act of saving a life. It was an act of making things comfortable. And that's totally false. Furthermore, the Messiah comes to strengthen the Torah, to strengthen the performance of the mitzvahs. What is the legacy of Jesus Christus? Paul, who is known as the great impostor, the great fabricator, Paul, Saul of Tarshish, removed all of the commandments except for the belief in Jesus. It's not your deeds, it's your faith. So therefore you don't have to do any of the mitzvahs. You don't have to keep Shabbat. You don't have to eat matzah on Passover and avoid chametz and avoid leavened bread. You don't have to sit in the sukkah. You just have to believe in the Messiah. I know some people like that. Those people were lunatics in my time, and those people who said the same thing, if he believed it. I'm not sure he believed it. Saul of Tarshish might have been a plant, but if he believed it, he was a lunatic. The Torah is forever. God says in the Torah that these commandments are eternal. He says that in Deuteronomy 31, in Parshas 30 and 31, Nitzavim, Parshas Nitzavim, that these mitzvahs are eternal, and the covenant that I'm making with you is eternal, all the days that the heavens are upon the earth. Nowhere in the Torah does it indicate, nowhere in the prophets does it indicate that the mitzvahs are temporary. The last of the prophets, Malachi, says remember the Torah of Moses. Remember and keep it. Are you supposed to just remember it as a book put on the shelf? That's irrelevant. It's meant to be kept. King David in the Psalms extols the virtue of Torah study and the performance of the mitzvahs. Psalm 119 is filled with all of those things. I suggest you read it, Joel. Jesus Christus did not perform the mitzvahs. He determined what he was going to perform and what he wasn't going to perform. In other words, he made his own rules up. So he did not study the Torah and promote the Torah, promote the commandments of the mitzvahs. He also did not gather all of Israel, nor did he defeat any enemies. Messiah is supposed to defeat enemies. And after the defeat of the enemy, he's supposed to gather all the Jews, all the people of Israel, and rebuild the temple. As a result of Jesus, the temple was destroyed. Or right after his coming, the temple was destroyed. He didn't build the temple. And as a result of the belief in Jesus, the Romans kept the temple destroyed. Furthermore, we say every day, twice a day at least, we actually say it more. We say, Shema Yisrael, Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God. That means God is my energy in my life, the energy of my body, and the life of my soul. The Lord is one. There's only the Creator. Everything else is included in God's being. There is nothing else but God. That's what oneness means. Whom do the Christians worship? God or Jesus? The answer is they worship Jesus. They worship something other than the Creator. No, it's one. How, if it's one, then there's nothing else but God. You can't worship something other than the Creator, according to the Torah. Those who worship something other than the Creator are idolaters. So, you Christians out there, if you worship Jesus, you're an idolater. The only thing a Gentile is allowed to do is allowed to believe that God has allowed helpers, shutfim, partners, and has created partners for God. Just as it says, the parents of a child are God's partners in the process of making that child. That you're allowed to do, but to worship Jesus as the deity, the one that you listen to, that is prohibited by the Torah. That's called idolatry. That the Romans did this is nothing new. The Romans were pagans. They believed in many gods. They didn't believe in a single central God. This was convenient. But you out there with brains in your head, infinity is singular. There are no two ultimate infinities. Ultimate infinity encompasses everything. And if you're going to say that Jesus somehow or other is part of that infinity, so are you, so am I, so is the cow outside. Worshipping someone other than the Creator is idolatry. Jesus cannot not only be the Messiah, he can't even be a rabbi. And furthermore, The prophets, the prophecies are all for the redemption of Israel. What did the Roman Catholic Church do? The redemption of Israel. They celebrated the redemption of Israel. They tried killing all Jews at different times. Now, they couldn't get away with it for some reason or other. They had some squeamish, whatever the reason was. In Spain, they tried killing all of the Jews, exterminating the Jews. In France, in England, in Germany, in Austria, in Russia, all of those wonderful countries known as Europe, where Christianity was the prevailing religion, all tried to exterminate the Jews. They want and celebrate the redemption of Israel, the coming of Israel back to Eretz Yisrael, to the Holy Land. What are you, crazy? It took the Vatican almost 50 years to get over this, 40 years, whatever it was. This is for them a theological difficulty of the greatest order. Once the Jews have rejected Jesus, they're going to be forever downtrodden. What's going on in Europe? What's going on in Rome? People are abandoning the churches. Why are they abandoning the churches? Because it's patently false. The Gospels are filled with thousands of contradictions, not just singular contradictions. They contradict each other, the statements within themselves. I can't tell you where they are because I don't study the Gospels. I had a student, his name is and was Professor Shlomo Sokolovsky, whose teachings, by the way, Moshe Kravitz from Jews for Judaism took and developed. Shlomo Sokolovsky made 6-hour-long tapes. Not for you out there. Wasn't trying to convince Gentiles not to believe, because it's better to believe than to not believe. He was targeting his brother. His brother had married a non-Jewish girl, and the condition was that he could only marry her if he converted to Christianity, which he did. And Shlomo was trying to show him that this was folly, this is stupidity. Shlomo went through the entire Gospels with a convert who had one time studied to be a priest. And they discovered thousands of contradictions, logical missteps, all kinds of improper reasoning, improper statements. And he put it on tape, 6-hour tapes, several times. His brother never responded. I'm hoping one day his brother will, if he should see this video. The Messiah, my friends, has to be a king fearless, has to promote the Torah and the mitzvahs, has to fight and destroy the enemies of Israel. Jesus never fought anyone, never defeated anyone. On the contrary, he was defeated and captured and put on a cross. And Jesus never brought the Jewish people together, never built a temple. And Jesus was a megalomaniac. He believed in himself, but he was not strong enough to accept his own death. The rest is myth that was entered in by later people. So Joel, why don't you learn or teach in your books chapter 11 of the laws of king according to Maimonides and what he says about Jesus, and try to discredit what I just said. These are not my words, these are the words of Maimonides. Let's see how far we go.